Hey, Chris, welcome. Glad you could join us. We're joined here today by Chris Walker, CEO of Passetto and the executive chairman of Refine Labs. Chris, you're a seasoned B2B guy. You founded your own B2B digital demand agency, Refine Labs, and now you started a software company, Passetto, providing what I saw as GTM Strategy as a service. Can you talk a little bit about sort of what drove you to start a software company after all these years in the services industry?
Yeah, let's talk through it. And it's interesting as you think about bootstrapped startup that the path that you initially take sometimes changes a lot as you start to get into the market and find your own voice and listen to customers and see where the market is going with a fresh perspective. And so our positioning and long-term strategy continues to evolve. But the impetus for starting Passetto was that over 5 years at Refine Labs, being the CEO, and even through 2022 consulting with our customers directly, that I saw this consistent pattern over and over, that the customers that were successful with us were able to have a strong executive team that changed the core KPIs and how they thought about attribution and were able to overcome some of those traditional things and therefore be able to be very successful with our strategy. And the ones that weren't able to do that or didn't have a CMO that could control the executive team or for whatever reason couldn't get aligned on those things, that those customers were the least successful with us and ended up many viewing the project as a failure. And as I continued to dive more and more into the details, I continued to see this core pattern that the reality is that B2B executives do not have the data they need in the right structure to make what should be fast, easy decisions. Instead, those decisions become very slow and very hard and difficult to get people aligned, and therefore leads to a bunch of inaction, leads to companies continuing to do the same thing over and over to appease the KPIs that they have in place that they haven't scrutinized or changed in the last 10 years. And our vision at Passetto is to fundamentally add a new view of data that I think will give executives the data they need to make what should be fast and easy decisions and actually make them fast and easy.
You talk a lot about the B2B buying journey and sort of like how that's evolved and changed over time. Some of the concepts that you talk about a lot are buying signal. You talk about data, making data-driven decisions. And obviously, look, everything is digital. Everything yields data now. So you should have a lot of data, but using that data is sometimes easier said than done. So can you talk a little bit about sort of like just overall, you talk about 2012 a lot. Like how has the buying journey changed and the buyer experience changed over, the last decade?
So I think the core driver of what's changed in the past 10 years is that B2B buyers have all the information they need to make fundamentally almost any decision about what to buy software without ever talking to your sales team, which was entirely different than what it was 10 years ago or back in 2012. And the sources of information that buyers have in order to help make those decisions have evolved fundamentally to a level where in 2012, you couldn't access people that you trusted or thought leaders or the people that spoke at conferences or peers or other people very easily over the internet. And now 10 years later, all of those things are available. You could send me a direct DM and get a recommendation on any marketing or sales or go-to-market technology right now and get a much better answer and a more objective answer than going and having a 30-minute demo with a sales team at a vendor. And every single person recognizes that they trust their peers that they're able to find through social networks, content platforms, communities, direct text messages, Slack, Discord, all these different places that do not get tracked by the B2B measurement systems that were put in place in 2012 and still persist today. And so what happens is that B2B buyers are over here doing all these things that B2B companies aren't measuring, and B2B companies are back at HQ measuring their Google ads and their SEO and other things like that, thinking that they're winning, when in reality, those things are just easily tracked and being able to put into a dashboard. And there just becomes a very big divergence, which now as the pressure comes in the economy and, net new business is declining while costs are staying the same, companies need to figure out how are we going to deliver an appropriate ROI? How are we going to hit our CAC targets? How are we going to achieve Rule of 40 if we're only growing at 10%? Fuck, that means we have to be at 30% EBITDA. We're at 0% EBITDA right now. And the whole game is fundamentally changed when you think about sales and marketing, where 5 years ago, B2B companies would do anything that had a prayer to work, and they would spend money on anything that might even get them one deal regardless of the efficiency. And the transition now is we need to look at all the things that we do that don't work and cut them out, because it creates different levels of teams, management structures, technology, data costs, alignment costs, more meetings, more reporting, around things that generally are not being effective. And so I think we just need to have a lot more scrutiny and a lot more conviction around the things that we invest in and the things that we don't and go to market today.
Can you talk a little bit about, you talk about signal a lot, and I really appreciate sort of how you speak to signal, because when I drew that diagram I referred to earlier, I wanted to I drew all these points in time. Some are trackable, some are not. I think you call it dark social or the dark funnel at the top. It's all the awareness creation that's hard to track, but it's very important. And then it kind of moves into more performance-based programs. And I know you've broken all the funnels out into different sort of areas, which I wholeheartedly agree with. But can you talk about GTM signal in terms of like how you advise your clients to think about that?
Yeah, first off, quick note on Google, since you mentioned it, like it's not one company, maybe 25%, but on average of the 46 companies that we've analyzed in their data, looking at all of their investments across all of their go-to-market, that a majority of companies can't even achieve a 12-month advertising CAC payback. That means direct advertising spend on branded terms where somebody goes to Google and searches your company name. And that's just the advertising spend. Then you add in marketing headcount and you're at 24 months. Then you add SDRs and sales and ops and technology. And all of a sudden you're at 36-month CAC payback for someone that searched your brand in Google. And so I think we just need to be looking at data and challenging these things, because most of the companies that we interact with are spending between $100K and $1 million a month on Google ads with measurably untenable ROI, and have been sitting on this for 24 months and haven't done anything about it except for raise the budget. And that just comes down to an inability to understand where else to deploy that much money. At Google, it's so easy to pour another $100K in and just blow the money. And in other things in marketing, you have to be a lot more measured. You have to be a lot more thoughtful. You have to be a lot more comprehensive around building content that works and distributing it properly and measuring it properly. And so I think just the fast hit of, we need to spend 100 more K before the quarter ends. Let's just throw it into Google. And it just surprises me, because companies you see thought leaders on LinkedIn, other people talk about how data driven they are and how they make decisions based on data. And then you go in and consult with these companies, and what you realize is almost none of the decisions are actually based on data. It's based on subjective opinion of executives using a ton of confusing data that doesn't tell a real story to just prop up what they want to do anyway. Now, to transition into the signal concept, what we actually want to talk about here, I want to frame up this concept as an idea of your go-to-market machine. Is that what it is? It's a big machine. You could look at it as a manufacturing facility. And for the first 5 years of my career, I spent time in manufacturing facilities doing lean process optimization and measurement and designing processes and adding technology to specific parts of processes to make them more efficient, to streamline operations, to think about how our supply chain, and then how do we manufacture millions of parts on time, in spec, meets quality assurance, and we can deliver to customers. Now, I want you to imagine and try and take that to a level where your go-to-market machine is a manufacturing facility. In that case, all the parts that are coming into your manufacturing facility are the signals. They are signals that your buyer sends that then get delivered into the manufacturing facility as parts. Then there's a pre-sales department that then has to qualify quality assurance and try and do incoming inspection and things like that. And what happens is that part of the process in B2B companies right now is 99.9% of the parts get thrown out and scrapped as junk that don't even make it into the manufacturing facility. And then you have all these people at the beginning of the process, and you have all of these parts coming in that are total garbage that you just continue to waste money and energy on buying the part and on processing the part. And if you ran a manufacturing facility and you saw that data, which is very clear, the first thing you would do is say, we're going to audit every single one of our suppliers and we're going to get rid of the suppliers that suck. And the reality is that B2B companies don't even track the signal data through incoming inspection to that to even really see all the times that they're losing, which I think is a key insight. There's a survivorship bias inside of B2B data where 99 times you could fail, and then the 100th time you're successful, and then you overwrite all the 99 times that you failed, and you just see the time that you were successful, and you don't see the data about all the times that you failed. And so when you think about signals, what are signals? Signals are signs of intent that our people or accounts send us that we decide based on data we're going to invest human capital to then go and do inspection and qualify and try and get them into a meeting. And needing to look at a customer's process from signal to revenue, knowing that the signal, this is backed by data, depending on the signal, not the fit of the account, just the signal, that it can vary in sales productivity by 100x depending on the signal. You take a cold list pull out of Zoom Info or some shitty content syndication lead or something like that. That's once a pair of low quality signals based on data. And then you could have high quality signals, a pricing request. They use qualified and they book a meeting on your website or something like that type of signal. Your sales is going to be 100x or more productive, 100x better sales velocity, and oftentimes 100x more close one revenue from good high quality signals based on data versus low quality signals. The problem is that B2B companies don't have the granularity of the data to even see those effects and impacts, especially when it comes to outside of first-party owned historically marketing data, and you start to look at third-party intent data and intent data coming from review sites and all this black box stuff coming from ABM platforms and blah, 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 blah. And so when you think about that, when we analyze the data, most companies on average track somewhere about 20 to 30% of their revenue they can trace back to a core signal. And the other 70% they can't because there's no tracking to that, and a lot of it is just independent sales prospecting, or the data isn't tracked consistently and comprehensively. Which then leaves you, please go ahead. I know we're short on time, so
no. This is we have a product called Signals, and intent is one of those conversations where you never know which way it's going to go. Because like you said, there's a lot of data out there. There's a lot of people say they have the best data and you should buy our data and you should use our data. Do you trust intent data? There's first party signal, there's third party signal. How do I use it? What can I trust? How do I know where the signal is coming from? It's kind of a loaded conversation. But one of the things that resonated with me is, I've been building software for a really long time, and you talk about a company's go-to-market, and you just referenced it as a machine, and you talk about a standardized revenue data model. You sort of talk about a company's GTM process like it's a thing and like it's a product. And I've even heard you refer to a GTM signal object that you create, like a custom object in Salesforce, which I thought was really interesting. Can you kind of talk about that a little bit? Because one of the things we hear a lot is our data is shit. Like our Salesforce data, it's dog shit. I can't use it, right? So we're constantly trying to work with companies to help them understand what data do they have that's actionable, what can I rely on, and how can I operationalize that? That's a big part of our conversations. So can you talk a little bit about that, how a company gets there, given it's a given that most of their data is probably bad. It's out of date, it's not appended, it's not updated, it's not reliable. Like, how do I get reliable signal?
Yeah, my estimate and estimates of others that are deeply involved in this work is that somewhere between 90 and 95% of B2B companies do not have what we would consider adequate data to make confident decisions in their go-to-market. And at least 5 or 10% that have the unicorn people in there and they've been able to figure it out. But broadly, yes, Salesforce data sucks. And it's because of a lack of commitment to the data from my perspective. That a B2B company, there are plenty of providers that understand what the best practices are, that have implemented it with hundreds of companies, that could do it at a reasonable cost relative to the entire amount of money they spend on sales and marketing every year. And they choose not to do it and invest more money in Google ads or hiring another SDR or something like that, rather than spending $30,000 in a month to fix their fucking data that would then pay off for the rest of their company. And so the recognition when it comes to the signal object is that if you're in an account-based integrated go-to-market motion, that your sales team is going to be doing prospecting, reaching out to customers to try and get meetings and pipeline hundreds of times with the same account and potentially hundreds of times with the same person before you're actually successful. And in the current structure inside of Salesforce data, you do one thing, you track it, and then the person doesn't make it through, and then you do another thing, and it overwrites all of that data, and then they track it again. And so if your person or company cycles through data 100 times, cycles through that process, that the first 99 times they went through are not tracked in your historicals and just the last time is. And when you think about leveraging signals as a new dimension of your data that goes alongside contacts and accounts and opportunities that are tracking the signal and then the outcome of the signal all the way through, people get this confused with a lead or contact object. This is a new dimension of data where a contact and an account are attached to a signal. And then when that signal has a disposition, if that thing happens again, a new signal record be created and tracked through so that if it happens 100 times, you have all 100 times of the data. You know exactly why sales reached out, what message they sent, what was the disposition, what was the intent signal of why sales reached out, what message they sent, what was the disposition. Hundreds of times for just one person or one account. And then if you take a mature, evolved go-to-market machine over a year, you'll have millions of data points around that signal disposition, millions of times. And what happens is the things that really work bubble up to the top. And what does it tell you? Where should we invest our human capital to get the best productivity and sales velocity? And where are all the things where we invest tons of human capital and sales development resources and sales resources where we have almost no productivity, where it would be better for the entire company to stop doing those things than to keep having people do shit that doesn't work. And the additional problem in go-to-market is a lot of the stuff at the bottom, the lowest productivity sales and sales development activities, actually those signals get triggered by massive marketing investments. Google advertising, content syndication, LinkedIn lead generation, Facebook and Meta lead generation, any other type of high-volume trackable touch that was big in the lead gen era, then spend $100 per signal to then have your sales development, sales team almost never win those opportunities. So then you have the cost of the signal, you have the cost of the sales development, cost of the sales resources, cost of the ops. And when you add up the costs and the productivity, what you see is it's just totally unproductive for your entire go-to-market to keep doing those things. And the challenge for most companies is when you use a W-shaped attribution model or you buy some marketing mix modeling software that you don't see the granularity of these clear, obvious insights.
AI is obviously a platform shift. We're very early in this, but given the widespread access to these foundation large language models and all of the innovation that's happening around AI, there's probably a whole new set of things that are being birthed right now. Obviously, still early, but over time, I think every company knows they're going to need to invest in AI as part of their long-term strategy. And the way I think about it is that data foundation becomes even more important because, again, AI is only as effective as the data that's powering it. So one of the things we think about a lot is how do you get your data in a place where you're going to be able to leverage AI effectively in terms of the things that it's really, really good at. One, it's really good at looking through a lot of data and making sense of it way better than any human could ever do with any variety of technologies. Two, it's really good at automation and creating kind of efficiency. You're seeing companies now saying that they're automating workers, AI workers. You're even seeing software companies talk about software as a person as opposed to a piece of software. So when you talk to companies, how do you speak to them in terms of preparing their foundation to leverage, the tsunami of capabilities that are going to be coming out over the next decade from AI?
Maybe my perspective on this is a little cynical. I don't know, but people can interpret that. But I think that B2B companies hype and overrush for things that are far away while they miss everything that is really valuable right now. Most B2B companies can't even produce a podcast and LinkedIn content that people want. They can't even create content that their customer engages with, gets distributed in a place where they actually are, where they consume it, where they share it with their colleagues, where it makes an impact. They can't even do stuff like that. And we're talking about how we're going to automate our entire CRM and outbound process with AI. And I feel like we need to have an approach to how we use technology. You could go back 5 years and almost look at what AI is to account-based marketing platforms. I would say 95% of companies that have purchased an account-based marketing platform do not have sales, marketing, and SDRs all operating in it, would largely say that they're not getting the ROI against this investment, that they can't get cross-functional alignment even to have their target set of accounts tiered in their CRM, and they buy a piece of $200,000 a year technology and then have it sit on the shelf where marketing runs $10,000 a month in display ads, and that's all that it is. And the sad part is that the same thing is likely to happen with AI, that we need the foundations in place before we start to layer on technology. So if you look at the account-based marketing example, we need to have alignment on who our best target customers are, what tiers they sit in, and what we're willing to invest and spend to acquire a customer in each tier based on their expected lifetime value. We need to be able to have a marketing machine that gets those target accounts to want to buy from us, which is driven through specific differentiated content and expert insights that drive our customers to think differently about their current situation. And therefore, we need to really understand our customer. And so all those different things that need to be in place to be successful are skipped. And then we just buy a piece of technology, put a display out on it and say, yeah, we're doing ABM. The same thing goes with AI in this specific example, which is that the foundational Salesforce data is a total fucking mess. And when you collect and you say, okay, what was the lead source of this data? And you start tracking Google ads and your demo and pricing requests on the same property, and you're mixing offers and signals with channels and triggers, that you realize that all that data is fundamentally useless, that a trigger like Google ads is very different than a signal like a demo request, and they need to be tracked differently, and all the data underneath it needs to be tracked differently. And regardless of how smart your AI is, if you feed it a bunch of bad stuff, it's going to give you a bunch of bad stuff out.
Yeah.
And I do not have confidence that, especially with all the CRM data that I see, that AI is going to be able to deliver any meaningful, important insights out of the data foundation there, because there's no structure to connect all of the marketing and customer journey data to all the opportunity and sales data in a comprehensive way yet. Another thing that you do is when you look at the different teams, the sales development, sales, and marketing teams inside of a go-to-market, that they all use different data. And they track conflicting data across the departments. And then when they bring it all together in a QBR deck, none of it makes sense. And the SDR data is tracked purely to comp them on how many meetings that they got. When they look at their SDR data, all they think about is who's the most talented SDR, which is Jimmy must be really good at delivering that message, not looking at all the data around why Jimmy's reaching out, and the signals that Jimmy's using are actually the thing that's valuable, not the talent of the person. And I just think that there's a ton of conflicting stuff. And so what they'll try to do, just like they try to do with ABM, okay, let's some company that we already use put AI into their product, let's use it. Or this new company comes along and says they have AI for all of our data and doing all these things. Let's use that thing, skip all the fundamentals around data and customer insights, and basically just create a lot of noise.
Yeah, and I think, ABM, the thing I appreciate about ABM is I think it implements rigor in a company to at least try to align around a strategic set of accounts, and everything is sort of born from that, at least ideology, which I appreciate. I know that there's a lot of companies that
sure do too
execute it that well, but I always ask people, where are you on your ABM maturity scale, right? Are you guys all bought in 100%? Are you working across, the entire business aligned to this ABM strategy and these set of accounts? I really always appreciate that, because it's easier to work with them because they have some rigor. Nobody has all their data in a perfect place. As a software builder, for me, the promise of AI is too great. There's no way that everything isn't AI driven. I think we're going to discover over time what AI is really effective at, given the reality that companies live in. And the thing I'd like to ask you a specific question, because it seems like every day there's another company that's saying they're going to automate outbound. We all see our inboxes. They get pretty filled up these days. I mean, first of all, there was sequences, and now there's going to be AI, LLM written emails that are automated into sequences. Where do you think the area of kind of like pipeline automation or pipeline generation, what do you think I sense some healthy skepticism from you, obviously, but what's the area that's really, really a good fit for AI and early adopters?
So the thing that I see clear in the data with almost all the companies that I analyze is that their sales development prospecting drives revenue. 10 to 30% on average net new business coming from independent sales prospecting, mostly done by SDRs. Not through marketing signals or partner referrals, just literally close lost lists, recycled leads, cold Zoom list polls, random intent data that they're able to find. Maybe they have first party like de-anonymization, whatever they're using that's not being tracked right now, but there's being revenue generated from there. The problem is that they spend way too much money to get that type of result. The human capital is very unproductive and very expensive. And so it's, to me, the thing is, it's not that we should stop doing sales prospecting. It's that we need to figure out how to make it way more efficient. And AI does lead to a nice promise around that. I think that in the short term, companies will capitalize a lot. Like there are tools out there right now that will know the exact person that's on your website, pull it out, put it into an automation, enrich all the data, send it a personalized message in 2 minutes based on that. All that stuff's already out there. That's a huge advantage today. I think that over time, as that stuff continues to perpetuate, just like what happened with the email spam cannons that are out there, that email inboxes will adjust, just like social media algorithms adjust and every single other thing will adjust, where what those platforms, email providers, social networks, things like that need to do is they need to protect and prioritize their user. And so if that means that people are getting way more emails, they'll figure out ways to block those emails. They'll figure out ways. They recently had like the general tab, and then they have the promotional tab that happened like 5 years ago. They'll continue to find other ways to protect the users. But I think in the short term, it offers a very interesting advantage, like almost like a growth hack. I don't like calling them growth hacks because they're smart, but an interesting growth hack in the short term for companies that are able to move quickly and figure it out. I do think there's an opportunity there. What are you doing? You're doing what an $80,000 a year employee does for free, the 75 cents to buy the data and some software costs. So when we think about the actual issue in sales prospecting, it being too inefficient and too expensive, that AI provides a very interesting path to be able to solve that core problem, which has resulted through over-specialization within the go-to-market team. That's why we're here.
And Chris, we really appreciate you joining us today. Like I said, ever since I discovered you, I listened to a lot of your content, and I agree with a lot of your philosophies and your perspectives. One of the reasons we called this company, this is my third company, we called it Qualified because we sort of identified that demand generation, marketing automation was going to go through a pretty significant transformation, and we felt like we wanted to attack certain parts of it. And that's kind of why we called the company Qualified, because really it's all about the data. It's all about the data. It's all about the signal. It's all about making data-driven decisions. And I think that trend will continue. And we also really fundamentally believe that, you're not always selling. We love talking to customers. We love talking to thought leaders like yourself. We hope that people can learn a lot, and I'm sure that people can learn a lot from listening to your content. So we really appreciate you joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. I had a blast. A really deep technical conversation. Really appreciated it. Thank you.
All right. Cheers, Chris.